everyone, you're welcome to my channel. I'm Halima, and today's tutorial will be on how to draft a basic block bodice pattern. With the help of this block bodice pattern we're about to do right now, you can make your garments such as t-shirt, top, blouse, jacket, and many more. But before we get started, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do subscribe to my channel and turn on your notification bell. That way you get to know what my new video upload will be all about. Without further ado, can we get down to the tutorials? What are the tools we need for this illustration? I'll be using my drawing paper. I'll be using my measuring tape. I'll be using my eraser, my curve rulers. I have my armhole ruler here and my hips curve ruler here. Then I have my straight ruler. I have my pen and my scissors. But finally, the most important part of this tutorial is that we need our body measurement. And our body measurements are my own body measurements, which is the bust measurement, the bust circumference, the hip circumference, and the waist circumference. And also I'll be needing my shoulder to shoulder length, my bust span. I'll be needing my shoulder to waist length. I'll also be needing my shoulder to hips length. With all these detailed measurements, we will go down to the drawing table and put this measurement and make this illustration. Please sit down and enjoy this illustration. So on the drawing table, I've placed my paper folded in two halves, one for the front panel, one for the back panel. I've made a guideline, as you can see, from where all my measurement to be taken from. So from the top of the guideline, I'm going to take down all vertical measurements, and my vertical measurements are my shoulder to my bust point, my shoulder to my waist point, my shoulder to my hips point. So I'm going to put down all the vertical measurements. So let's do that together. So my shoulder from my guideline line to my bust point, that's the tip of my nipple, is 11.2. So from my shoulder to my bust point is 11.2. So we're going to put 11.2 down together. Then from that same top point, from top of the guideline, from my shoulder to my waistline is 17. And then from my shoulder to my final hips is 25. Now that we have taken down the shoulder to the bust point, I'll do the same. I'll transfer the same measurement the other side. So my shoulder to my bust point is 11.2. My shoulder to my waist is 17. My shoulder to my hips is 25. We're just transferring the same measurements we took there to the other side of the line. Is that okay? Just to make sure that we get enough stuff measured. So what we're going to do now is to rule out each of these measurements. To rule it out each of these measurements. So I'm going to get my ruler. I'm going to get my ruler and rule the first line, which is my shoulder to my bust line, to my bust point, my shoulder to my waistline, and my shoulder to my hips line. So we have ruled out all the vertical measurement that was taken. Next thing we'll do together is for us to label this line to avoid to make our job easier. So the guideline where I took all my measurement from, I'm going to call it the shoulder line. Please follow me as I'm walking. It's called the shoulder line. From the shoulder line to the bust line, to the bust point where I measured 11.2, we'll call it together the bust line. From the shoulder line to where I measured 17, we'll call it together the waistline. And then from the shoulder line to the final measurement of where my blouse will sit, we'll call it the what? The hips line. So now that we have labeled all the lines clearly for us to see, the step we'll be doing now is to develop the neckline and the shoulder slope. I'll be focusing on the shoulder line area. So for a standard medium sized person, as neckline will be 3" by 3", meaning I'll take my 3" in the horizontal direction and I'll do the same thing in the vertical direction, as we can all see, and then get my curve ruler and connect both points together. So remember, for a medium sized person, it's 3" by 3". So 3" by 3", and we've connected the curve together. So this is our neckline for this pattern. The next thing we have to do is to put in our shoulder slope on the shoulder line. But before we do that, remember my shoulder to shoulder is 16. I'll have to divide my shoulder by shoulder measurement into 2, which is 16 divided by 2 is 8. I will be putting down the 8. Okay, I'll go over it again. My shoulder to shoulder measurement is 16. 16 divided by 2 is 8. And I've gone on the shoulder line and I've imputed the 8. Now my shoulder is not a straight straight direction. It is inclined. So therefore we need to put a shoulder slope. The shoulder slope usually vary between 0.75 to 1.5. For this pattern I'm doing, I'll be using 1 inch. So 1 inch is now my new shoulder slope. So we're going to connect my shoulder slope, which is the new point 1 inch, to my shoulder neck, to my neck points. So I'm going to do that together with the help of my ruler. So as you can see now, this is now my shoulder slope point. Draw this line out. The next thing we have to do from here is to draw the armhole, the armhole depth. And the armhole depth is gotten by using this formula, your bust divided by 6 plus 1.5. For my own case, my bust is bust 40 divided by 6 plus 1.5. My armhole depth is 8 inch. We will be imputing the 8 inch on the pattern paper. So let's do that together. My armhole depth is 8 inch. We will be putting down 8 inch together. So this is 8 inch, and this armhole depth is the seat of the arm circle that forms the armhole curve. That is what helps us to develop the armhole curve, and that is where the chest point lies. So this is now the armhole depth, 8 inch. So I'm just going to connect a straight line along that point to the shoulder point. So I'll do that, and we'll do that together. So we're just going to connect this as a straight line. Right. The next thing we need to do is try and extend it outwardly, because that is where the bust line sits. So I'm going to just extend this outwardly to help us develop the armhole curve. So after doing that, now the next step we'll have to do is to put down all our horizontal measurements. So our horizontal body measurements are the bust measurements, the bust circumference, the waist circumference, and the hip circumference. All the horizontal body measurement will be divided by 4. For example, we'll be divided by 4. Let's say the bust circumference, my bust circumference is 40. 40 divided by 4 is 10. I will put down 10 inch at this point. So 10 inch at this armhole point. On the bust line, I will also put my 10 inch. My waist is 35. 35 divided by 4 is 8.75. But I'll be adding 1 inch for that. So 8.75 plus the 1 inch for that makes it 9.75. So we'll be imputing a total of 9.75. And my hips is 46. 46 divided by 4 is 11.5. So I will be imputing 11.5. So after getting all these horizontal measurements impute on the bodice, The next thing we have to do is to connect all points together to form the side seam of this pattern. So we'll be doing that together with the help of our ruler. So on my waistline, I will connect it to my hips. Please just do and follow me. So from my waist, from my chest line and to my bust line, I'll just take it as a straight line, and then I have to connect it to my waistline. This is now the side seam for this pattern. So we've been able to generate the side seam. The next thing we have to do now is to get our armhole circle. So what do? We'll take the armhole depth and measure it. So we're going to measure the armhole depth together. And when we check, the armhole depth is 8. 8 divided by 2 is what? 4. At this point 4, the front armhole is more curved than the back armhole. The back armhole is not as curved as the front armhole. So you're advised to always go in at this midpoint by 0.75. So we have this point, and this point will now form our front armhole. So let's use our armhole curve ruler. That's what I have here to connect both points. So this point to this point is just a straight point. We'll just do our connection together. So this is my front armhole. If for the back armhole, we'll just be using this point, the midpoint here, and connect it back to the final bust point, which is the underarm UB. I'll call it the underarm point. So I'll just take this, connect it. Next thing we have to do is to develop our dart, to draw our dart. For us to draw our dart, we need to get our bust palm, and your bust palm is the same thing as your nipple to nipple point. Take your tape and measure your nipple to nipple point and divide it by 2. In my own case, my nipple to nipple point is 8.5. Divided by 2 is 4.25, which is, and that way we can generate our dart. So we'll do this together with a straight ruler. Just follow my illustration. So we'll do this together with a straight ruler. It is advisable to always come down, to always go down 1 inch from your bust line, because you don't want your dart to be on your bust point. So I'll take 1 inch downwards, and on my hips line I will take 2 inch upward. That way your dart will sit properly. Now on my waistline, remember I did add 1 inch for that consideration into my waist measurement. That is the waist divided by 4 plus 1 inch for that. So I'm going to use that 1 inch and split it into 2 halves. So each part will be 0.5 for the dart, 0.5. The next thing we'll be doing after this is to draw out the points. So I will draw out my dart now, and this is my dart point, my dart. Just see what I do. So finally we have done this together by generating our dart. The next thing now we need to do is to get the back neckline, and the back neckline is just 1 inch deep, so it's 3 inch by 1 inch. So I'll just go down and put in 1 inch. Remember, horizontally 3 inch, vertically 1 inch. What do we do now? We connect it back with the curve ruler. So this is my back neckline and this is my front neckline. And remember, this is my front armhole and this is my back armhole. So with this illustration, we have been able to make our back bodice and our front bodice. Now the next thing, I will cut out our pattern. I did not add seam allowance to this bodice. When we want to do the sewing, it is easier for you to add whatever seam allowance you want, depend on how you want it. If you want it fitted, if you want it loosed, and if you want it semi-fitted. For this illustration, I will not be adding seam allowance. So next I will do is to use my tracing wheel and transfer all dimension to reflect on the back bodice. So let's do that together. So we will be transferring. We are done with the pattern now. We just want to transfer all dimension to the back bodice. So I'm going to start with my waistline, my bust line. I will transfer my bust line dimension. So we'll just go ahead and cut. Now we're done with the pattern. The next thing we have to do is to cut out our pattern. And remember, this is our front pattern, and we'll cut out the back pattern too. So let's do that together. Doing here is to cut the back armhole first. The reason why I didn't put seam allowance is that you can always this is the original pattern. You can always trace it and generate the new pattern for which you'll be using to do your design. So I'm going to cut off also the neckline for the back. On the table, I have cut out each of the panel, front and back separate. I have the front panel and I have the back panel. Right. And I have transfer all measurements from the front bodice to the back bodice. That is the waistline, the bust line, the chest line. But let's note one thing here. For the front bodice, that line started 1 inch below the bust line. In the case of the back bodice, the dart line will be 1 inch above the bust line, and the hips line will be 2 inch upward for the dart legs. So with this, we've been able to do our basic block bodice pattern as shown below. I hope you do enjoy this video, and please subscribe to my channel, like, share, and turn on your notification bell, and enjoy.